Testing, testing. JB here. December 28th, 2023. Just going to be on the audio maybe about 5 minutes or so. Well, probably, I say five, it turns into 10. But I'll just be really quick. Not much to talk about. The S&P, well, the SPY, it's an extremely tight range today. Chop Central, all that does is kill premium. So not a fun day if you're holding on to positions that aren't going much, right? I mentioned it this morning. Pretty much most of my watch list stocks were either down like a quarter of a percent or up a percent. There's not many stocks up 1, 2, 3%, and the names that are small cap, very small cap, micro cap names like Tilray, $2.38, CRON, some of these the pot names, BHC, which isn't it's $8 stocks, that's up 3%. So not a lot of fun. So some of the reason I'm being a little, not completely sitting on my hands, but just being a little conservative heading into the end of the year. So we'll have to see how tomorrow plays out. All the headlines this morning were about historical moves and comparisons, right? The huge move in the NASDAQ this year, I think it's on pace to be the best performance in the NASDAQ since 1999. Pretty impressive considering where it was at the start of the year, or at least the sentiment and everything, all the possible headwinds. We have two wars going on. Well, you can throw all these things at the wall and say, wow, the market shouldn't be up this much, but it is. So the market's pricing in future rate cuts or whatever the case may be. The economy's doing well. Whatever you make cases back and forth, but the market's telling you the market is the best. Is the correct answer. Well, I wouldn't say the correct answer, but when there's arguments about if the market goes up or down, and someone's betting it goes down, and the market goes up, it's telling you were wrong, right? So so it's always good to be right when you trade the market. So a couple of things I just first want to talk about Massimo, and I went on my rant yesterday. Unfortunately, the timing of my entry into the calls could have been worse, but an hour and a half after I entered the calls, there was a circuit court put a stay on the ban for the Apple Watch, sales, import ban. Some of these companies that still have inventory, Amazon, Best Buy, could still sell the watch, but I don't know. Like in terms of revenues for MASI, MASI's coming out. They already have a watch, and they're coming out with other watches, and they're more medically, they're more tailored towards folks who are looking for real health. And I wouldn't say real health, but it's pretty much all health. It's not about having music or all these other functions that the Apple Watch can do. I don't know that the Apple Watch is going to hurt MASI's watch, but the fact that they have this technology that is integrated into the Apple Watch, and it's not like they're going to pull it out. You have to think at some point they come out with either a licensing deal, some kind of settlement, or Apple buys the company outright. It's a $6 billion company. You read the articles, and when I did my research on MASI at the start of the year for my top 5 stock webinar, you can see they had talks with Apple back in the day. I think at some point the executive thought he was going to be acquired, and the CEO, the founder, they call him I guess he's self-anointed Tim Cook of health tech or med tech, but he created a lot of the technology and patents that MASI has right now. The negative with MASI is they went and acquired a high-end audio company. So I don't know what, it was tough when you go and buy a med tech company and then you go out and buy a company that makes speakers. It's kind of tough to wrap your head around that. But I think they were looking to expand into other products that they can all, group together, whether it's going to be health-related headphones or things like that. So I take a look at MASI. I think it's going to 135, 140, even on without the news going on with Apple. And supposedly there's going to be a ruling on January 12th where I guess they'll decide if the ban's going to remain in place. If that happens, I would think the stock's going to go nuts anyway. Supposedly Apple's working on some kind of software update or workaround on the patent, which doesn't make sense. Like if you knew this was coming 2 months ago, 60 days ago on October 23rd when they announced the ITC announced the ban or the potential ban, and then a 60-day window for the president to say no ban, and that came to pass. You would think Apple in those 60 days would have came up with a solution, unless they thought that maybe Biden was going to go and remove the ban. But then there's some talk, right? The CEO and founder of Massimo supposedly is a friend of Biden's. There's always these stories, but who knows? But anyway, I think it still heads higher. I was looking at calls. The spreads are so tough even to get an entry. Then if it starts to go the wrong direction to get out, it's going to be tough. So I'll just hold on to my 125s. At least those are coming back a little bit. I would like to see him flat before the end of the day, but don't have much time here. I think it heads much higher in the coming weeks. I talked yesterday about their last earnings call. There was a analyst fireside chat with one of the analysts too that I listened to, and just a lot of good stuff they have going on. And back in the summer when it dropped from 150 all the way down, I think it hit 110 the next day on the gap down because they lowered their guidance from 8% growth to 0% growth because hospitals were just staying with their products and not ordering more. So you would have to think that's going to improve, and then you have the possible tailwind with Apple News. So I just think it heads higher into tomorrow and then into next year. ALT, I added some of those some later dated strikes. I want to be able to get out of the rest of my 15 calls and then just ride the rest because this is a name, and you see even today back into the 10s, then back up to 1251. It's going to be volatile, and I think it's going to be volatile, but it's going to shake out to the upside, and maybe there's some more FOMO, 15, and then if it breaks 15, maybe even up into the 20s. Take a look at the chart, and it was I think it was a $60 stock a couple years ago. Let's see if I can pull it up. Just because it was $60 stock doesn't mean that it's going back to $60, but I think there's an opportunity at least to fill some gaps. I posted a chart. Once it broke over 12, that there's a gap. The next gap, let's see. I don't even have it up here. But there's a lot of, I call it the air pocket. There's space between that gap and the next level, which is between 12 and 17. So I think it's got a pretty good chance, better than 50% chance of heading 15 plus in the coming weeks, if not in the coming days. So at the same token, it's very volatile. So I want to be able to ride. I'll take the rest of profits off on the 15s. And then just hold those later dated strikes, not the higher strikes, with the profits from the 15s. And this way it's risk free. Go from there. I guess ALT, maybe it had a split. Stock was in the 40s in 2020. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think it heads higher, and that's kind of the thought process behind adding the ALT calls. WW, it's trading, and there's a huge put volume today. And I didn't even look at the recent update. But typically when I'm looking at the volume on WW in regards to options, it's typically skewed to the call side. But today there's more puts traded than calls. 5,200 puts traded versus 3,500 calls. To me, it doesn't mean too much. Of course, if I see a lot of call volume, I could use that as because I'm biased. I think it's headed higher. So of course I want to see more call volume. Although call volume could be people selling calls. But you saw it sell off today. There's no news really to speak of. It almost looks like some of these bears and people who write these short pieces on names like to load up on the puts before they come out with their piece. That's almost what it looked like. Considering a lot of the names that I get bullish on, mysteriously, somehow, some of these short people write these bear pieces on. It's happened on many, many stocks over the years. Wix.com, Trupanion obviously is another. The Joint, if everybody remembers, that was one of my top 5 stocks, or maybe it's a back half name. Chiropractic. I still think that's a great story, but I got to stay away because it's like a bear rate on that name, but someone came out with a hit piece on that. There's a lot of names over the years. So I'm not saying that they look at my trades and see my post on FinTwit and say, wow, this is a great opportunity to poke some holes in the name. Because you certainly could poke some holes in WW. They're sitting on $1.5 billion in debt. They're not generating enough to pay that back in any 1-2 years. Probably not possible unless there's some substantial growth or they do some kind of offering. If the stock goes, let's say it goes up to 30 or 40 bucks, then they do an offering, and then maybe that debt situation starts to resolve itself. But until that happens, that overhang is going to create an opportunity for these people who like to, create the FUD like they've been doing on Troop, TRUP. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But that's kind of the thought process on WW. I'm going to hold on for now. Take a look at what usually happens towards the end of the year. You have these New Year's resolutions, and I think at some point people are going to start looking for some of these names, take advantage of folks looking to lose weight. GLP-1 is going to be all over. I mean, there already is, but to start the year, it's going to be all over everywhere. And I think that's just going to push people into WW. So take a look, still over that 200-day moving average, which is kind of kryptonite. That's at 820. So I would hate to see it go to 820, but if it does have more weakness tomorrow, I at least want to see that hold. Otherwise, things can get tricky. You also have a death cross. So that's when the 50-day moving average crosses the 200-day moving average. Hopefully that reverses soon. Another thing that the bears could say, wow, look at the technicals on the stock. I don't know what the percentage of names that go up after a bear cross, but hopefully WW, it won't matter for WW, it just heads higher. That's that. I'm trying to think of some of these other names. Yesterday was such a choppy day, just flat. Fiverr, which I didn't pull up. That was solid this morning and hasn't done much since. That's up 0.22%. Same yesterday, but most of these names are flat. SMG I was looking for to add some calls if it showed a follow through today. Sitting here nearly at 65, so I'll just hold on to those for now. Yeah, Clear's down here 21.13, hasn't been doing much since that downgrade. Probably needs a catalyst kick in the butt. Maybe we'll get that soon. Trip still have those 2250s. It's sitting kind of flat here. At some point, it's going to take off. And like I've posted maybe last week, severe underperformance in comparison in that sector when you have TripAdvisor not up in the teens for the year, and then you have Booking.com and Expedia up hundreds of percent. So you have to think at some point that trend's going to reverse, or at least Trip is going to catch up. Another catch up play. But not going to add any more positions on that name as well. And I guess last, so I was looking at Spot again. Spot had two analyst notes. I think, who was it this morning? KeyBank came out, reiterated, I think they raised the price target on Netflix, and then also mentioned Spotify, reiterated overweight rating, $255 price target, and then some boutique analyst firm came out with a buy rating on Spotify, but it was like a $210, maybe it was $220 price target. I almost grabbed calls at the open. Maybe tomorrow will be one of those spec plays where I'll get some lottos to play for a move to 195 or so. And then last but not least is Roku, and I mentioned it yesterday. I think that news around Amazon and their the fact they're adding ads, their Amazon Prime videos, I think that just bodes well for Roku. It kind of adds credibility to their business model and just shows that they've been doing the right thing for years, and all these other companies are starting to follow. I think I keep mentioning it, but at some point I think it's going to do those runs. It's done it time and time again where it sells off, and then all of a sudden it goes on a 3-4 day run from, right now it's 93, so 93 to 115, 120. That could happen, similar to what happens to ISRG, which I've traded a couple times this year for some of those moves. So Spot and Roku definitely is some names I'll watch tomorrow. But I'm not going to force things, especially in a tape that's choppy like this. We get 477 on the 477.60 on the SPY, and then 5 minutes later we're down to 476. Let's the percent one. I could put this on. Let's see here. Hang on one second. And I mean, so you're talking about less than a 0.2% move today between the highs and the lows. I mean, that's remarkable. You barely see that on the stock. I forget what the year was. Maybe it was 2014. It was a day in August, and the SPY moved in a 1 cent range for like 20 minutes. I'll have to find it one day and post it in the watch list because it's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Imagine the SPY, well, the S&P too would trade in that tight range. Right now we're at 477.11. Imagine it traded between 477.11 and 477.12 for 15 minutes. I mean, that's how things were back in 2000. And some of these years, there's been some crazy stuff going on. The war stories. Maybe I'll put that in the war stories on the bottom of the chat room. But that's about it, folks. Hope everyone has a great day. 23 minutes left to the close. Rock and roll. I'll be on tomorrow. Rock and roll.